Good evening, Munchkins. Let me begin with this rant with a word from your sponsor. That would be me. If our constitutional republic is going to survive, it is imperative that conservative Christians learn to articulate the relevance of their beliefs to their children and to young folks. So Dad here is on a mission to use evidence-based reasoning and historical evidence to articulate the relevance of Christianity to the secular world and to demonstrate that the American constitutional republic is the best form of government ever devised by man. So Dad releases an article on Substack every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday on that topic, and the articles are written in both podcast and written form for your convenience. So click on the link at the end of this article to get these articles for free. If you subscribe for them, they make life a lot easier to produce these. Having said all that, let's hop into it. Now, we've spoken extensively on the question of the value of a college degree, but I don't recall if we've ever spoken about it in the context of the long view. Now, what I mean by the term the long view is the value of college measured against the totality of an entire lifetime. When people talk about college, they're largely talking about it only from the aspect of its ability to deliver a higher income from a job. But they're not talking about it from an educational, social, family development, cultural, or religious perspective at all. They're not talking about it from the perspective of the totality of a lifetime. Human beings are, of course, complicated, and it's very short-sighted to make the college decision based solely on its potential to drive income. That is very small picture thinking. Wisdom begins with looking at the big picture and looking at the long view. So with all of that in mind, this rant will attempt to provide you with the big picture and the long view. To do that, you really have to begin with two questions. Those two questions are as follows. The first one, when it's the year 2040 and you Munchkins are about 40 years old, what do you want your life to look like? So that's the first question. The second question, what strategies should be employed now so that you can achieve that vision by the year 2040? So before jumping into that discussion, it'll be helpful for you to understand the word shibboleth. This is a very important concept. The word shibboleth defines the belief in a strategy or code of conduct that made sense in the past, but it no longer is relevant due to changes in the environment. So let me illustrate that with an example. Let's go back in time to the year 1920 and imagine that you come from a family that manufactured excellent horse carriages for several generations. By 1920, the combustible engine has been invented, Henry Ford begins to mass produce automobiles, and suddenly nobody's buying horse carriages anymore. Yet, your mom and dad insist that you continue to learn how to build horse carriages for your future career. That would be a great example of a shibboleth. History is filled with shibboleths. In the military, the adage, "don't fight the last war," comes to mind. An example of this is the Japanese defeating the Russians at the Battle of Tsushima Strait in 1905. The Japanese beat the Russians primarily because the Japanese invested in making great battleships. When World War II came around, the Japanese continued to focus on making great battleships, even though naval warfare had moved on from battleships being the primary weapon to aircraft carriers being the primary weapon. That didn't work out so well for them in their contest against the United States for supremacy in the Pacific during World War II. America simply made too many aircraft carriers for them to handle while they were still building battleships. So the Japanese were fighting the last war. They were married to the shibboleth of battleships in the age of aircraft carriers. In World War II, the Axis and the Allies began the war thinking aggressive cavalry charges on horseback would win the day. Unfortunately for them, the invention of the machine gun had made cavalry charges obsolete. But this lesson wasn't learned until literally millions of lives were expended in the trenches of World War I. The Axis and the Allies were fighting the last war. They were married to the shibboleth of cavalry charges on horseback in the age of machine guns. Shibboleth thinking is alive and well when it comes to boomers advising their Generation X and millennial children to go to college. Boomers were able to attend college at a time when it was inexpensive, the quality of the education was high, and there were very few people who had a college degree. As a result, the assumption that a college degree would result in an increased income was valid for boomers. Boomers then assumed that because college worked for them in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that it would work for their children and grandchildren, who are Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z, and the generations that follow in the 90s and beyond. So they continued to push the shibboleth of college, even though the environment has changed radically from the environment that boomers faced. The boomers faced an era when college was inexpensive and very few people had a degree, and the quality of the actual education was high. Generation X, Millennials, and Z face an era where the college degree is excessively overpriced, too many people have a degree, and the quality of the actual education received is abysmal, to say the least. In spite of this knowledge, boomers continue to sell their hapless children on the shibboleth of college. In this, they resemble the Japanese in World War II, the Axis and Allies in World War I, and the horse carriage manufacturers of 1920. So these poor kids followed their boomer parents' advice, and now we have an entire generation of young people who hold useless degrees and woke nonsense. They get jobs serving frappuccinos and cafe au lait for a fraction of the income that they were expected to receive. And to top it off, they've acquired upwards of $100,000 in debt for a useless degree with the only type of debt that can't be discharged in bankruptcy court. You can't make this up. As an aside, the student loan scam is a crime against young people that should be stopped immediately. But we'll set that aside for now. I digress. On the other hand, the skilled trades have been exploding in both the need for young people and the incomes they can earn. Dirty Jobs star Mike Rowe reported on his most recent visit to an AI center in Texas that he met 3 young electricians there, all under the age of 30, and all of them were debt-free. All of them were making between $240,000 and $280,000 a year, and none of them went to college, and therefore none of them had college debt. Now, one might argue that these numbers are outliers. After all, the average income for an electrician in the United States is around $60,000 a year. But you must factor in that these guys didn't lose 4 to 5 years of their income while attending college, and they didn't acquire $100,000 in college loan debt. That means they're roughly $340,000 ahead of their college peers by the age of 22. What a nice head start in life. This is a good place to segue into the conversation about the long view. Remember question number 1? That was, when it's the year 2040 and you're about 40 years old, what do you want your life to look like? Only you can answer that question for you personally. But old dad can take a stab at the big picture place where you'd like to find yourself by the age of, say, 40 to 45. Dad can take a stab at the financial environment that you would like to occupy at that age. Here goes. The ideal place to be at age 45 is in a position where you've acquired enough assets to completely leave the W-2 world and not work at all should you choose. In other words, you will need to have acquired enough assets so that the assets can support your living requirements. Once you've accomplished that goal, then you can decide to take one of the following courses of action. A, work on charitable activities of your own choosing for the rest of your life. B, continue doing your current job, only, of course, if you really enjoy it. And C, start your own business. Of course, you could do some combination of all of the above. But this, I believe, is a great big picture way to look at your future landscape. You will immediately notice that there's no advice given regarding the work that you should choose to do. That part's entirely up to you. Now, given the framework I just set forth, the type of work doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the job is prestigious. It doesn't matter if your friends will look down on the type of job or profession you've chosen. It doesn't matter whether you have the proper degree in the proper field or the proper profession. Those only matter to the degree that they will assist you in acquiring enough assets to completely leave W-2 employment by the age of 45. Please understand this. There is power in the big picture mindset. So many of your peers are caught up in the branding of the university or degree. They're caught up in worrying what their peers will think of their career choice. They're caught up in the useless credentialing mill created by the higher education pimps. So they follow the advice of their boomer parents and wind up going $60,000 to $100,000 in the hole for degrees like ethnic studies, anthropology, psychology, and communications. Then they get out of college and wind up working as baristas for $20 an hour and hoping that mom and dad have not turned their bedroom into an office so they can have a place to live. You'll, of course, feel the pressure having made the decision to avoid college. Your peers will not be impressed with your career choice. Adults will ask you what college are you going to attend, as if there are no other alternatives. You'll have to absorb that mindset for a while. But stay fixated on the long view mindset. Keep that picture of your 45-year-old self in your brain. Also remember this, all work is noble. One of the biggest problems your peers face is that they no longer believe that all work is noble. That the everyone go to college mindset has created this belief that a prestigious job is a job where you sit on your rear end behind a desk all day. Jobs that require working with your hands are no longer considered prestigious by the college crowd. This mindset hamstrings them in ways that are deeply harmful. For example, let's say a young man goes to college to become a software engineer. He graduates from college and finds that AI has eliminated the need for graduates with software engineering degree. This young person has his whole identity tied up in being a software engineer, not to mention the $100,000 in debt he's sunk into this enterprise. He spends the next 3 or 4 years looking for a job as a software engineer. But the best he can find is a job that is related but only pays a fraction of what the software engineer used to make. In the meantime, the shipyard in this area is paying buku bucks for welders, but he thinks being a welder is beneath him because in his mind, he's a software engineer. The dad mindset is this: do what the market asks you to do. If the market demands welding, do welding. If the market demands plumbing, do plumbing. If it demands being a linesman, be a linesman. If being a shoe shine boy pays $20,000 more than being a software engineer, then you better go out there and get some rags and shinola. Never forget, the goal is not the job. The goal is to acquire assets quickly enough so that you don't need the job as soon as possible. The second mistake our young friend is making is the financial mistake. He has already made the mistake of going into debt for a job in a field that has made his $100,000 degree obsolete. He's compounding the mistake by not reinventing himself for what the market is demanding. The market does not want the software engineering skills. The market does want welder skills. If he had a big picture mindset delivered to him by dad, then he would understand that a specific job isn't important. What is important is the answer to the question: which decision advances me to the age 45 objective the fastest? The clear answer to that question is the welder gig, not the software engineering gig. So dude, go do the welder gig. That clearly advances him to his age 45 goal faster than the software engineering gig. This is a question of not letting the job define who you are. The job is what you do, never who you are. If you let the job define who you are, when the economy changes and your job is eliminated, then psychologically you are eliminated. Don't let that happen. The job or career is the means, never the ends. The job or career is just a tool to get you to the 40-year-old freedom transition point. Nothing more, nothing less. You must avoid thinking of the 20-year-old to 40-year-old time frame as a waste of time also. There's a huge value to be gained from this time period. This is the time period where you will learn how to work, you'll learn people management skills, you'll learn conflict resolution skills, and you will learn a career field. The business you work for will teach you the world of business. Consider it an advanced degree program that pays you rather than a degree that you must pay for. In that 20-year time period, you will have at least one terrible manager, I guarantee it, 3 to 4 mediocre managers, and 1 sensational manager. You will learn what to do, what not to do by working with these guys. You will be attending the University of Reality, where the education has far more value than the brick and mortar fake universities that produce diplomas that would have more value if they were softer and labeled Charmin. Don't squeeze them. Now that we covered question number 1, let's move on to question number 2, which is, what strategies should be employed now so that you can achieve that vision by 2040? The strategies to be employed in the 20 to 40 time period all involve what I call playing financial defense. Defense is the tactic of minimizing expenses. Offense is the tactic of maximizing expenses. During this time period, you want to play great defense. The most common mistakes made by the young fall into 3 common buckets. The first one is eating out. By far, the biggest financial mistake made by young people is eating out. You must focus on buying food at the grocery store and preparing food at home. The markup for purchasing fast food at restaurants is outrageous, and if you do the math, it will blow you out of the water. When your mom and I decided to purchase our first home, we saved the down payment simply by eliminating eating out at restaurants. It is amazing the amount of money that can be saved with just that strategy. When I was young, I knew people who went to Starbucks 3 times a day, and then complained that they couldn't afford the down payment for a home. I sat down with one of them and ran the math to show her just how much she could save if she just eliminated Starbucks. It worked out to a whopping $10,800 a year. $30 a day at Starbucks, 30 days a month, $900 a month in savings, or $10,800 a year. We further crunched the numbers and found that she was spending an additional $500 a week eating at restaurants. So she found another $24,000 a year she could apply to the down payment on her first home. By eliminating Starbucks and eating out, she was able to save $34,000 and acquire her first home. That said, you don't have to be a hermit. Here are some tips on going out with friends on the cheap. Order one dinner and split the meal. Eat at home before going out and order dessert only instead of dinner. Never, ever order alcohol at a restaurant because the markup's phenomenal. Go out to coffee whenever possible instead of a sit-down restaurant. The second big ticket item that people really make the mistake on is buying new cars. Maybe the most boneheaded expenditure of money for a young person, or anyone really, is the purchase of a new car. Let me explain. Everybody knows the new car loses roughly 30% of its value the minute you drive it off the lot. Currently, the average price of a new car is $50,000. I can't believe it. I just looked this up. Needless to say, that's insane. Then you add in the fact that they come loaded with software that is unproven and maintenance costs that are sky high because the technology required to repair them requires self-maintenance and prevents mom and pop repair shops from doing the work. In addition, they come with spyware so the government insurance companies can manage your movement. Finally, they don't have a great track record for longevity. You definitely want to acquire used cars that are not loaded with modern software. Cars built between the year 2000 and 2012 are ideal. They were built to last, they can be worked on by the mom and pop repair shop, and they won't spy on you. I cannot emphasize enough that you buy old cars only. If you need to take a big trip or feel the need to impress someone, then rent a car for those occasions, but only buy used cars and keep them forever. If Cubans could drive cars around that were made in the 50s, we could drive cars around that were made in the 90s and early 2000s and be just fine. The final big ticket item that young people make the mistake on is spending money on big vacations. This is a gigantic and massive mistake. This one blows my mind. The travel industry has done a great job of making people feel that unless they've waited in an airport for 2 hours in line, been groped by a stranger at security, had their luggage searched, sat trapped in an aluminum tube for 16 hours eating garbage, and sat next to a screaming baby, their vacation's a dud. I swear to you, I don't get it. It's so much easier to hop in your car and drive 2 hours to the most beautiful stretch of coastline in the United States, if not the world. No security checks, no bad food, no getting stuck on the tarmac, no being stuck breathing the same air in an aluminum tube with 200 strangers, and most importantly, your wallet's intact. Do your finances a big favor. Don't take big vacations until you've achieved your 40 to 45-year-old objective. If you do that for 15 to 20 years, you'll find out two things. One, you'll get to that financial independence goal a whole lot sooner. Two, you'll not want to do the big vacation when you do get to that age. The best vacation is the simple one, the one that's spontaneous and involves as little planning as possible. Air travel eliminates spontaneity by definition. Driving is king, beaches and national parks are queen. They're inexpensive, spontaneous, and require like little planning. We get enough planning and scheduling from the work world. Why take a vacation that requires more scheduling and planning? Whew, that was a lot. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss this one. The earlier in life you implement this strategy, the faster you'll achieve your goal. I'm so proud of each of you for avoiding the college trap. It takes stones to zig when everybody else is zagging. Peace out. But before closing, I just remember one last thing. First PS, I got two PSs. The first one, currently it's seen as a point of pride for people to say that they're the first person in their family to go to college or the first person to get a master's degree. And I was one of those people, right? So I'm guilty. Someday in the not too distant future, it's going to be a point of pride to say that you were smart enough to not go to college and acquire the debt and woke sanity and chose instead to acquire assets. Kiddos, you got to zig when they zag. Don't be a lemming. The second PS, I thought I would provide you with some bonus financial advice regarding eating out. This is so cool because this is an exercise that your mom and I actually did about 20 years ago. So we got stuck out with kids. I didn't plan the trip, and kids got hungry, so we stopped at a drive-through window at McDonald's. I planned poorly and didn't bring any food along, so I had to stop and go to a fast food joint, which I've always tried to avoid doing, but I did it. So I got everybody a burger, fries, and a soda, the standard fast food fare, right? I was shocked when the total came to $30. Now you laugh, that sounds like nothing now, but $30 20 years ago was a lot of money. I went home and did some quick and dirty math around the cost of eating out after that experience, and here's what I found. At that time, the cost of a McDonald's meal was about $5 a person. Let's assume that each of you ate the McDonald's twice a day. That'd be $10 a day. Let's multiply that number by the number of days in a month. That's 30. That brings us to $300 a month to feed one individual. There were 6 people in our household, so that works out to be $1,800 a month in a grocery bill if we did McDonald's that way. At the time, your mom and I were spending about $500 a month for groceries, so about $2.77 a person. $83 a person per month, that works out to $2.76 per person per day. To break it down further and make it apples to apples comparison with the McDonald's example, we must assume 2 meals per day, so dividing $2.76 by 2 leaves us $1.38 per meal. So remember that McDonald's meal cost was $5. The grocery store meal was $1.38. The McDonald's meal cost 3.5 times more than a grocery store meal. And I haven't even factored the nutritional value comparison. And remember, that's a fast food comparison. That's not even a sit-down restaurant comparison, which would be a whole lot more. So kiddos, eating out for young people is financial suicide. So minimize that. Peace out. Again, ciao.